Hello, my name is Alan Watson, and in just 4 minutes and 30 seconds from now, I'm going to share with you a very peculiar, completely natural, and safe tinnitus curing secret that neither you or your doctor will have ever heard before. You'll discover how everything you think you know about tinnitus is wrong. How the cause of your or a loved one's tinnitus has absolutely nothing to do with how loud your music, job, or life is, or was, or even the result of a virus or infection, but is in fact far more shocking than you've been led to believe. Backed by breakthrough research carried out by a team of doctors and researchers in a top 5 university research facility in England, this simple but effective system to erasing tinnitus out of your life for good has now helped cure over 105,302 people of all the frustrating ringing, hissing, buzzing. All these people living life as they deserve, who in just 14 days completely and permanently erase their tinnitus, all naturally, all safely, all by following this unusual secret backed up by clinical research. And it's something you can easily do right this second from the comfort of your own home without going near a single ineffective and expensive tinnitus treatment or remedy, or even visiting a single doctor. No matter if your doctor or physician has told you that your tinnitus is incurable, which is simply not true. Even if you've just been diagnosed with tinnitus, or have been suffering for 10, 20, or even 50 years. Even if you've tried every single tinnitus treatment or remedy under the sun. Trust me, when I'm finished letting you in on this controversial secret, you're going to be furious at the doctors and media for lying to you this whole time about this supposedly incurable condition. You'll finally be able to concentrate on your life, rather than incessant noise. You'll be able to no longer live in fear of loud noises, of music, of cinemas, of having fun. And can you just imagine being able to lie in bed at night with not a single buzz or ring or hissing sound? Being able to relax and enjoy life as it was meant to be enjoyed. It may seem impossible to you now, and you may be feeling skeptical, but stay with me today and pay close attention, as it's time to throw away the preconceived notion that tinnitus is a life sentence, and begin to follow this 100% natural and safe tinnitus erasing system, just like thousands before you, and you too can see for yourself how effective it is. People like Kimberly Hammett from Polk City, Florida, who said,
"Hi, Alan. What I did," as Martha Bergman.
You're probably wondering how your average, admittedly skeptical American with zero medical knowledge whatsoever has stumbled upon a 100% natural, safe and effective tinnitus cure that you've never even heard of before. As I mentioned, my name is Alan Watson, and that's my gorgeous wife Mary on the left there. I'm a senior sound engineer, 48 years old, and live in Richmond, Indiana with my beautiful wife and 2 sons. Just like 50+ million other Americans with tinnitus, mine started off as a faint ringing in my ears in the summer of 2011. I thought nothing of it at first, and would just wiggle my ear until it eventually surpassed. But as the ringing and buzzing high-pitched noises became more apparent and more frequent, I deep down knew something was up. Tinnitus. My doctor immediately blamed my job. Of course, it was an easy target for him to point the finger at. With my headphones playing soundtracks on all day, he preached it had permanently damaged my ears. It didn't really explain how in my workplace with dozens of others doing exactly the same thing, why I was the one who got tinnitus. Surely everyone else should have it too, and how some people are actually born with tinnitus. But as I did back then, I took my doctor's advice as gospel, and thought I had no other option but to grin and bear it. As the ringing noises gradually got worse, I started to get desperate. It was distracting me in my work. I was exhausted. My days were becoming more and more stressful. I would lay in bed at night just wishing the noise would go away for just a couple of minutes so I could drift naturally to sleep. I tried all the different hearing aids. I tried uncomfortable masking devices. I even tried antibiotics and antiviral medication. Nothing worked. Sadly, by definition, there is no cure for tinnitus. And sadly, it's something you and I have been told over and over again, so many times, you actually believe it. And doctors and friends, even family, really play down and don't quite understand just how frustrating and hopeless tinnitus really makes you feel. Just because a doctor cannot see it, hear it, experience it, and as it's definitely not life-threatening or painful, they are simply uninterested. They are bored with it. That is the sad fact. I too had given up on a cure, even existing. Each day was becoming tougher and tougher. I was struggling to concentrate on even the most menial tasks. I was exhausted from lack of sleep. Life truly was miserable. Years of stress and ringing eventually got to me, and as I was preparing my morning coffee at work, a headache came on. So painful, so severe, it felt like someone had put my head in a vice, and was slowly tightening it until my head would burst. It was the most horrific pain I have ever experienced in my life. My coffee cup dropped to the floor, and so did I a second later. I thought I was having a stroke. The tension headache was so bad that it left my eyes unable to cope. My vision system was giving up. It had begun to shut down. I could barely see, and if I tried to, all I got was a dark blurry mess, barely able to make out people's faces and objects. I lay in bed that night, the constant drilling of tinnitus ringing in my ears, my head about to explode, tears rolling down my face. I wondered why I deserved all this. What did I do to have to endure such a terrible condition? At that time, I would rather have been deaf than endure this constant, uninterrupted noise. Sadly, and I am almost embarrassed to say this now, but as far as I could see, my life was over. Little did I know that this exact moment would soon lead to my discovery of a powerful tinnitus curing secret, now used by over 105,000 Americans. The same secret able to help you or a loved one be able to achieve exactly the same results. Unable to work, I lay in bed for days, then weeks. I became bedridden, overweight, scrambling around, hands in front of me to find my way around my house to move. My wife became my servant, at my every beck and call. She too was feeling the burden. Nothing was improving, no matter which medication, antibiotic, or painkiller my doctor gave me. Television was useless and frustrating as I couldn't see what was going on. My only great comfort was the radio. I became a great fan of the radio and would spend hours listening each day. It wasn't until September the 18th, 2013, I remember it well, that something very odd happened. I was tuning in my radio when I came across a radio station. I'd never heard it before, and I'm not quite sure how my radio picked it up, but it seemed to be from across the pond. On it spoke a softly spoken, articulate doctor as their guest speaker. His name, Dr. James Phillips. He was an ENT, ear, nose, and throat specialist, consultant, with over 25 years' experience in the field, with a very distinct Queen's English-British accent. To my surprise, he was talking about tinnitus, a subject that sadly almost no one would care to discuss these days. I turned up the volume and paid close attention. Dr. Phillips was explaining how after getting enough funding, he was in the first phase of carrying out breakthrough research into tinnitus, along with his team of established researchers and doctors in an Oxford University research laboratory. Whilst all conventional treatments for tinnitus I had tried in the past merely helped, albeit poorly, cover up the symptoms, they were the first team to tackle head-on the actual cause of tinnitus. The truth is, most doctors are purely concerned with the effect, the symptom of the condition, rather than the cause. Dr. Phillips and his team, rather than wasting his research funding on how to suppress the symptoms, were aiming directly for the root of the problem. He explained how they conducted research on 100 tinnitus sufferers and came to a surprising preliminary conclusion. In our ear, there is a part named the cochlea, which collects sound waves through a coil of many tiny hairs. The cochlea is connected to our brain by the cochlea nerve, which carries the sound signals. Each nerve cell in our ear, as well as our body, is covered in something called a myelin sheath. Without this myelin sheath, neuronal communication becomes nearly impossible, and neurons become susceptible to damage. It is essential for nerve cells to function. Recent February 2014 research released in the peer-reviewed Journal of Neuroscience has confirmed that damage to myelin, the protection sheet around cells, alters the transmission of auditory signals occurring during hearing conditions. For many different reasons, the sheath can become damaged, or lessened in volume, or even damaged from birth. Damage to the myelin sheath results in all sorts of strange noises such as hissing, clicking, ringing, and buzzing, also known as tinnitus. Loud music and so forth can exacerbate the problem, but are not the culprits. Explaining how people can be born with tinnitus, or never even been subjected to loud music or loud sounds, but can still end up with it. And although traditional doctors and establishments lead you to believe, once this myelin sheath is damaged, that is it, finished. You have to deal with your tinnitus for the rest of your life. This is dead wrong. Why? Well, what spurred Dr. Phillips to set up his expert team and gather funding was because of research by US-based Mayo Clinic in 2007 titled Antibody Leads to Repair of Myelin Sheath in Lab Study. It concluded that Mayo Clinic researchers have found that a human antibody administered in a single low dose in laboratory mouse models can repair myelin, the insulating covering of nerves. This process is called remyelination, in which the myelin sheath is repaired. Research in 2003 published in the Brain Pathology Journal and many other papers and journals have all arrived to the exact same conclusion. With the evidence he needed, Dr. Phillips set up his team to work out how they can activate the production of this antibody in the body of the tinnitus sufferers. The beauty of antibodies is that they are made by the body, by your body. Your body is constantly making them to identify and neutralize foreign objects such as bacteria and viruses, as opposed to chemicals and drugs made in labs that your body would be incapable of making. With antibodies, they are produced naturally and safely. Dr. Phillips explained further. Get the patient to produce the antibody themselves. The antibody will repair the layer of myelin sheath on their nerve cells, thus reversing the patient's tinnitus permanently. Remarkably, in their research facility, they had managed to create a compound which activated the production of this essential antibody inside the patient. And from a period of 12 to 19 days, each and every one of the patients had experienced a 98% to 100% removal of all tinnitus symptoms, never to come back again. Safe to say, the naturally produced antibodies in their bodies were working and doing their job just as the previous research had concluded. But it was all still very early research, and when asked how long till he released his breakthrough findings, he said, "We're in the initial testing phase. We need far more tests. These things take years. I would say up to 8 years." I sighed. The truth was, I didn't want to wait years. I wanted this now, right now. But with nothing to lose, I sat up, shook off my blues, got on the internet to find Dr. Phillips' details. Easily enough, I found them, and after many long-distance calls and pestering his receptionist for 5 whole days, I finally got through. Turned out he was pleased for someone to pay interest in his research as it was in such early stages. What Dr. Phillips told me was, safe to say, shocking. "Forget anything you've been told about tinnitus," he told me on the phone. So little is known and invested into finding a cure for tinnitus that people just believe what their book or GP tells them. In fact, the percentage of those who work in construction or the music business, who are renowned for constant loud noises every single day and suffer from tinnitus, is almost identical to the percentage of those in the general public. He explained that everyone had been looking in the wrong place for a tinnitus cure for so long that they believed one didn't exist. I was itching to get more information. I practically begged him to share his ingredients and method for activating the antibody production. After much deliberation, and after explaining everything I'd been through up to that point, he did. "I am not legally responsible for what you do with this," he said. I thanked him from the bottom of my heart. After the inspiring phone call, I was so excited, I was almost uncontrollable. I became obsessed with how I can create this antibody in my own body. One benefit of being home-ridden is that I had time, I mean hours after hours, to, albeit struggle, to scour online journals, medical papers, and search the internet. I had the list of compounds that Dr. Phillips had used to activate the production of the antibodies in his patients. And truthfully, I was expecting to have to invest in some sort of chemistry lab equipment, or get outside help. But to the shock of me and my wife, I had a revelation. One ingredient on Dr. Phillips's list was called choline. You probably never heard of it. I never had. But to my surprise, choline is found in eggs, beef, beans, and some nuts. It was unbelievable. Shockingly, working through the list, I found that each and every one of these required compounds were able to be found in single or combinations of natural, everyday, and inexpensive food items that could be picked up at my local grocery store. Some items I usually wouldn't touch or had even heard of, but lo and behold, there they were in my local grocery shop's shelf, just waiting to be picked up for a couple bucks. With Dr. Phillips's assistance, I came up with perfect combinations of these certain natural foods or ingredients that contained all the correct compounds necessary to activate the production of the antibody in my body, or tinnitus treats, as my wife called them. The great thing was, there was real variety, as each of the compounds required were available in many different foods. I began the program the very next day, using a system that some call ridiculous. I put together a varied 7-day rolling plan of which combination of handful of foods to eat each day that contained every necessary ingredient on Dr. Phillips's list. For 6 whole days, I noticed no difference whatsoever. It didn't make sense. I was doing exactly as the previous research had done, how my research had concluded, and how Dr. Phillips recommended. Admittedly, I still felt very skeptical. No treatment had worked before. No hearing aid, masking device, or even medication worked. And here I was, following a program developed on not even finished research from England by a doctor nearly 4,000 miles away. all using ingredients that cost less than $10 to put together. It was almost disheartening, but I carried on regardless. What other option was there? Each morning I put together the correct quantities of each food for the day. Waking on the 12th day, my eyes slowly adjusted to the light. I noticed something. I noticed nothing. Beautiful nothing. I got out of bed, my vision clear, my hearing as clear and silent as it was when I was a young man. I downright slapped myself in the face. I thought I was dreaming. Working. I admit,